Be me, just moved into a newly constructed subdivision called the Willows at Evergreen. My unit is an end-row townhome, complete with a small fenced yard and a designated parking pad. I work from home as a data analyst, my days structured and precise, much like my approach to life. My medical service dog, a calm golden retriever named Atlas, is always by my side, an indispensable part of my routine. Be not me, Brenda. My immediate next-door neighbor, a woman who appears to believe the entire cul-de-sac, including the public street parking, is an extension of her personal domain. She's the self-appointed queen of the Willows, armed with an unshakable confidence in her own interpretation of every rule, despite possessing no actual authority. My first interaction with Brenda was barely a week after I moved in. I had a friend visiting, and they parked their sedan directly across the street from my unit in a perfectly legal public street spot. The road is wide, designed for such use. Brenda emerged from her home, a storm cloud brewing on her face. She practically marched across the street. She approached my friend's car, gesturing wildly at it, then turned to me, arms crossed. "You can't have visitors parking here," she declared, her voice sharp, cutting through the afternoon quiet. "This spot is for overflow when I have guests. It's unofficially mine." I blinked. "Brenda, this is a public street. Anyone can park here, provided they're not blocking a driveway or fire hydrant." I gestured to the ample space. "My friend is parked completely legally." She scoffed, a dismissive sound. "Well, it's never been an issue before you moved in. We have an understanding here. I suggest your friend move their car before the homeowners association hears about it." Her eyes narrowed, as if daring me to challenge her. I just stared back, a flicker of something cold igniting deep inside me. My friend, sensing the weird tension, eventually moved their car further down the street just to avoid trouble. I made a mental note. Another incident, less than a month later. It was trash collection day. I had placed my city-issued bins at the curb, directly in front of my property line, precisely where the sanitation company instructs. Brenda, however, had a different philosophy. She insisted all bins on our side of the street be neatly aligned in front of her house, creating a uniform, aesthetically pleasing row. For her, she knocked sharply on my door at 7 a.m., her face pinched with disapproval. "Your bins are out of place," she stated without preamble. "They need to be moved down to where mine are. We maintain appearances here." I looked out at my bins, then hers. They were, again, perfectly legal and correctly positioned for collection. "Brenda, these are on my property's curb frontage. The city manual clearly states bins should be placed at the curb line of the owner's residence. If everyone followed your rule, someone would be blocking their neighbor's driveway." She waved her hand dismissively, as if swatting away a fly. "That's not how we do things in the Willows. Move them, or I'll have the association send you a notice." Her tone was laced with an implied threat. I maintained a neutral expression, but internally, I was already dissecting the homeowners association's covenants and restrictions, along with the city's municipal code regarding waste management. I didn't move my bins. The garbage truck collected them without issue. I saved the city's waste management guidelines to a folder on my desktop. Then there was the mailbox debacle. Our neighborhood has individual mailboxes, not a cluster box. Mine, like everyone else's, was a standard black unit on a post, installed by the developer according to United States Postal Service regulations. Brenda, apparently, decided my mailbox was too far from the edge of the street, making it difficult for the mail carrier to reach. She left a printed note on my door, citing some vague neighborhood standard, and suggesting I relocate it by no less than 6 inches. I reviewed the developer's architectural guidelines, the HOA bylaws, and even the USPS accessibility standards for residential mailboxes. Mine was compliant on all fronts. I tossed her note in the recycling bin. She stopped speaking to me directly after that, instead adopting a passive-aggressive posture whenever our paths crossed. She would visibly grimace or make a show of averting her gaze. I simply logged each interaction, noting dates, times, and her exact words. The major incident began subtly, then escalated rapidly. It started with my car. I have a specialized vehicle, modified to accommodate Atlas, my service dog, with a ramp and crate system. It's a larger vehicle than a standard sedan, but still fits perfectly within any normal parking space. I often parked it on the street directly in front of my house, adjacent to my own property line, again, perfectly legally on public land. It was convenient for Atlas, especially when his mobility was lower. Brenda considered this spot hers by divine right, despite it being a public thoroughfare and clearly not part of her property deed. She had a habit of having her friends, or even her cleaning service, park in this exact spot, even when ample space was available elsewhere. Now that my vehicle was frequently there, she began to take issue. One morning, I found a handwritten note tucked under my windshield wiper. "Your monstrosity of a vehicle is an eyesore and is blocking my view. Park it on your driveway or face consequences. This is MY Spot." It wasn't signed, but her distinctive, looping handwriting was unmistakable. I removed the note, photographed it, and filed it. A week later, a formal notice arrived from the Homeowners Association Management Company. It cited a parking violation for an oversized vehicle in a restricted zone. The notice requested immediate compliance and warned of fines. I checked the HOA bylaws immediately. There was no mention of oversized vehicle restrictions on public streets, nor were there any restricted zones other than fire lanes. The HOA covenants only applied to private property, not public street parking. This was a clear overreach, almost certainly instigated by Brenda. I immediately emailed the management company, politely but firmly requesting clarification and citing the lack of any supporting language in the governing documents. I also included photographic evidence of my vehicle being parked legally and screenshots of the public street designation from the city's GIS mapping system. The response from the management company was, predictably, vague and defensive. They stated it was a neighborhood amenity guideline being enforced. This was a red flag. Amenity guidelines are not typically legally binding in the same way covenants are, and certainly not on public land. I replied, requesting a specific bylaw or city ordinance number. They never provided one. The real breaking point came when Brenda decided to weaponize Atlas. My service dog is trained for mobility assistance and medical alerts. He is vital to my daily life. One afternoon, I was returning from a doctor's appointment. I parked my specialized vehicle, Atlas in tow, in the usual public spot in front of my house. As I was gently guiding Atlas down the ramp, Brenda suddenly appeared from her doorway, arms crossed, a look of triumph on her face. "That animal," she declared, pointing a finger at Atlas, "cannot be parking here. And frankly, it's not even allowed in the neighborhood. Pets are supposed to be confined to private property, and yours is constantly outside, visible from the street." Her voice was loud enough for several neighbors to hear. My blood ran cold. This was beyond petty parking disputes. This was a direct attack on my medical necessity and my civil rights. Atlas was wearing his service vest, clearly identifiable. "Brenda, Atlas is a legitimate service animal. He is protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. He is not a pet, and he is allowed to be with me wherever I legally am, including walking down a public street or being in my vehicle." She laughed, a short, sharp sound devoid of humor. "Don't give me that service animal nonsense. I see you walk him. He just looks like a regular dog, and he's parked in my spot. I've already spoken to the Homeowners Association president about this. They agree. No more parking that animal here, and keep it off the street entirely." The implication was clear. She had gone to the HOA, lied about Atlas being a pet, and manipulated them into agreeing to ban my service dog, tying it to her parking grievance. This was the specific, catastrophic decision based on the real-world event I had researched. The HOA, pressured by Brenda, was attempting to prohibit a service animal from using public areas and falsely linking it to a non-existent parking violation on public land. The full weight of the situation landed on me. Brenda was trying to make my life, and Atlas's life, impossible. She thought she had won. This was no longer a dispute. This was a legal fight, and Brenda had just handed me all the ammunition I would ever need. From that moment, I entered read-only mode. No more arguments, no more polite explanations. My demeanor became impassive, my responses clipped and factual. I stopped engaging Brenda entirely. Every interaction became a data point. I started a dedicated folder on my cloud drive, meticulously labeled Brenda Dossier. First, I downloaded and printed every single homeowners association governing document. The Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions, the Articles of Incorporation, the bylaws, and the architectural guidelines. I read them all, cover to cover, highlighting every mention of common areas, public property, pets versus service animals, and parking rules. As expected, there was absolutely no provision allowing the HOA to dictate parking on public streets, nor any clause that could legally restrict a legitimate service animal. In fact, a specific clause explicitly stated the HOA would comply with all federal, state, and local laws, including the Americans with Disabilities Act. Next, I obtained copies of the city's municipal code, specifically sections pertaining to public street parking, animal control, and zoning. Again, my parking was perfectly legal. Atlas, as a service animal, was exempt from any pet restrictions and had the same public access rights as I did. I scheduled an appointment with my doctor, obtaining a fresh, detailed letter confirming Atlas's status as a bona fide service animal and my medical need for him. I also secured a letter from his certified training facility outlining his specific tasks. I invested in a small, discreet body camera, perfectly legal in my state for one-party consent recordings. This would capture every future interaction. I also installed 2 exterior security cameras on my property, covering the public street in front of my house and the common sidewalk areas. These recorded 24/7 with time and date stamps. I started a detailed log. Every time Brenda approached my vehicle or Atlas or made any comment, it went into the log. I noted the exact time, date, her exact words, and corresponding camera footage timestamps. Every note she left, every email from the HOA management was photographed, scanned, and filed. I made sure to reply to every HOA communication, reiterating Atlas's legal status, citing specific federal and state laws, and asking for explicit bylaw references that were never provided. I CC'd my doctor's office on some of these. I had identified the critical loophole. Brenda had pressured the HOA into issuing an illegal order against a service animal based on a false premise about public street parking. The HOA management, in their haste to appease a vocal board member or resident like Brenda, had overstepped their authority and violated federal law. My plan was simple. Let them fully commit to their error, then present irrefutable evidence. The Homeowners Association, driven by Brenda's relentless complaints, scheduled a formal hearing regarding my violations. The notice outlined 2 primary issues: unauthorized animal on common property, referring to Atlas being visible from the street, and oversized vehicle parking in restricted area, my car in the public street spot. It felt like a trap. It was. But for Brenda, not me. The day of the hearing arrived. It was held in a small, stuffy room at the developer's sales office. Present were 3 HOA board members, the property manager from the management company, Brenda, and myself. My lawyer was not present, but I had consulted them extensively. I wanted to handle this myself first, setting the stage for their intervention if necessary. Brenda, looking smug and triumphant, spoke first. She launched into a dramatic monologue about how my pet was constantly roaming freely. A blatant lie. Atlas was always with me and on leash. How my vehicle blocked her view and was an eyesore. And how I was disrupting the peace and harmony of the neighborhood. She described Atlas as a menace and my car as gargantuan, practically begging the board to impose maximum fines and force me to move. She claimed she had evidence of Atlas wandering around. She produced grainy, zoomed-in photos from her phone of Atlas calmly walking beside me on the public sidewalk. "This is clearly a pet," she declared, pointing at a photo. "Look at him, just a regular dog." And she insists on parking that massive truck right there, day after day, ruining the aesthetics. It's an embarrassment to the Willows. When it was my turn, I did not raise my voice. I did not get emotional. I simply laid out my case, piece by methodical piece. "Members of the board, Mr. Henderson, I addressed the property manager. I understand there have been concerns raised, primarily by Miss Thompson, regarding my vehicle and my service animal, Atlas. I placed a neat binder on the table. First, regarding my vehicle, I began, opening the binder to a section clearly labeled. I have included the city's municipal code regarding public street parking. My vehicle is legally registered, insured, and parked within the designated public right-of-way. It is not an oversized vehicle by any city standard, nor is the area a restricted zone. I have provided the city's GIS map showing the public nature of the street. Any attempt by the Homeowners Association to enforce parking restrictions on public property is ultra vires and unenforceable. I paused, letting that sink in. The property manager, Mr. Henderson, shifted uncomfortably. Brenda bristled. Secondly, and more importantly, regarding Atlas. I turned to the next section, which contained copies of my doctor's letter, Atlas's training certification, and a printout of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Atlas is a fully certified, medically necessary service animal. He is not a pet. His presence is protected by federal law, specifically the ADA, and also by state disability statutes. I looked directly at Brenda. Miss Thompson stated earlier that Atlas cannot be parking here and is not allowed in the neighborhood. She further claimed that the HOA president agreed to ban Atlas from being off the street entirely. Is this the official position of the Homeowners Association? I asked the board members, my voice calm but firm. The board members exchanged nervous glances. Mr. Henderson, the property manager, cleared his throat. Well, Miss Thompson did express concerns, and we were trying to find a compromise. There is no compromise when it comes to federal law, I stated. Any attempt to restrict Atlas's presence or my use of a service vehicle related to his care, either on my private property or on public thoroughfares, constitutes a direct violation of my civil rights. I then presented printouts of court cases where HOAs had been successfully sued for similar ADA violations. Furthermore, I continued, I have documented every interaction with Miss Thompson regarding these issues. This includes the incident on date, where she told me my friend could not park on the public street. The incident on date, where she demanded I move my trash bins. The incident on date regarding my mailbox. I flipped through the binder, showing each dated, time-stamped piece of evidence. Photos of her notes, emails with her direct quotes, and even short, clear audio recordings from my body camera, confirming her demands and her explicit statements that the HOA agreed with her. And finally, on date and time, I concluded, pulling out a final, irrefutable piece of evidence. Miss Thompson explicitly stated, and I quote from this audio recording, that animal cannot be parking here. And frankly, it's not even allowed in the neighborhood. I've already spoken to the Homeowners Association president about this. They agree. No more parking that animal here, and keep it off the street entirely. I have full video and audio evidence of this interaction, along with several others. I played a short, crystal-clear snippet of Brenda's exact words. Her face, which moments ago had been triumphant, went pale. She began to stammer. That's not what I said. You're twisting my words. The recording speaks for itself, Miss Thompson, I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. You pressured the Homeowners Association into issuing a legally baseless warning regarding my perfectly legal vehicle, and worse, into attempting to ban my service animal, which violates my rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act. The Homeowners Association has no legal authority to impose parking restrictions on public streets, nor can it restrict a legitimate service animal. Your actions and the Homeowners Association's compliance with your unlawful demands have exposed this organization to significant legal liability. I have copies of all correspondence, video, and audio evidence, and my attorney is prepared to proceed with legal action if these baseless violations are not immediately rescinded and a formal apology issued. The room fell silent. Brenda looked like a cornered rat. The HOA board members looked horrified. Mr. Henderson, the property manager, buried his face in his hands. He knew what this meant. A class action lawsuit for ADA violations, perhaps. A massive financial penalty. The fallout was swift and spectacular. Within 48 hours, I received an official, deeply apologetic email from the Homeowners Association, countersigned by all board members and Mr. Henderson. It rescinded all previous violations against me, explicitly acknowledged Atlas as a protected service animal, and reaffirmed my right to park my vehicle on public streets. It also contained a paragraph stating that corrective action would be taken regarding certain individuals who have acted outside the scope of HOA authority. Brenda was immediately removed from any informal neighborhood committees she had chaired. Her influence was completely annihilated. I heard through the grapevine that her repeated, unsubstantiated complaints, coupled with her brazen disregard for actual legal boundaries, had caused significant legal exposure for the Homeowners Association. The legal firm advising the HOA issued a stern warning that her continued behavior could lead to the HOA itself taking action against her. This was the specific legal failure I had found in the news story. An HOA making an illegal decision, forced by an entitled individual, leading to them facing a lawsuit or severe legal trouble. The peace in the willows at Evergreen became tangible. No more notes, no more aggressive stares. Brenda became a ghost, avoiding my gaze and disappearing inside her house whenever I was outside with Atlas. My plan had worked. Update 1. 3 weeks later, just wanted to give an update to everyone curious. Things have been remarkably quiet since the meeting. The HOA seems to have learned its lesson and is now communicating far more professionally, citing actual bylaws and city ordinances. No more vague neighborhood amenity guidelines. Brenda still lives next door, but she's become a phantom. Her car is always parked in her driveway, never on the public street. She doesn't even make eye contact when she checks her mail. Atlas and I enjoy our walks without incident. I've heard rumors that the HOA is considering changes to its resident grievance process, probably to prevent another Brenda-level disaster. Update 2. 2 months later, big news from the Willows. Brenda's house went up for sale last week. A for sale sign mysteriously appeared in her yard. It seems the corrective action from the HOA wasn't just a slap on the wrist. Apparently, the legal firm the HOA consulted advised them to make an example, not just for the ADA violations, but for Brenda's pattern of harassment that caused them significant legal fees and potential exposure. She received multiple formal warnings from the HOA, citing her repeated false accusations and attempts to enforce non-existent rules. The whispers say she was eventually threatened with legal action by the HOA for creating a hostile environment and causing them financial harm. She folded. She's selling her house. Update 3, 6 months later, final update. Brenda is gone. The house sold surprisingly fast. I saw her packing a few weeks ago, looking utterly defeated, overseeing movers. She didn't so much as glance my way. A lovely young couple, both medical professionals, moved in. They have 2 small dogs, both incredibly well-behaved. They've already introduced themselves, and they seem like normal, pleasant people. Atlas loves their dogs. The neighborhood has truly become peaceful. It just goes to show you what happens when someone who thinks they own everything finally runs into someone who actually knows the rules. The Queen of the Willows has been dethroned, and peace reigns supreme. The lesson learned? Always document, always know your rights, and never, ever underestimate malicious compliance.